President Biden has long positioned himself as a kind of mainstream liberal, but with a political career spanning over 50 years, his views on major policies have often evolved. That includes one area the president is expected to address tonight, when he details a vision aimed at expanding the role of the federal government. For more, let's bring in CBS News senior political analyst John Dickerson. Hi there, John. Good to see you again. So President Biden has, of course, had a long political career. How would you describe his political evolution from senator to vice president to now president?
It's good to be with you, Elaine. He's come a long way from where he started in 1972, but so have politics. Being bipartisan doesn't mean what it used to. Being moderate doesn't mean what it used to. And so as a creature of the Senate, he held views, always a Democrat, but certainly not on the lefternmost part of his party. But think about it. If you want to think about how things have changed, in 1972, when he was elected, half of the Democrats who served with him came from states that had voted for Richard Nixon, which meant all those senators had to think about their constituents who liked a Republican president. That doesn't really happen anymore. There was only one state, Maine, in which a senator was elected to a party, in this case the Republican Party, and the state voted for a Democrat for president. In 2016, there were none of those. So you have a political environment in which the parties are much more rigid and much more ideological, and that gives you a sense of how much things have shifted in the time that he's moved from the Senate to the vice presidency to the presidency. So he is more liberal than he would have been in 1972, but all of politics has shifted since 1972.
So that leads to this next question. The pandemic, of course, is forcing a scaled-down audience, but a number of Republicans said that they would not attend, even if invited. And the president has met, we know, with a number of Republicans and publicly states a willingness to negotiate, but bipartisanship has proved elusive. You touched on it a moment ago, but what do you think some of the more persistent factors are, and especially with respect to, say, the last year or two in the atmosphere in Washington? What has shifted in your view?
Well, so many things have shifted, but if you look at presidential approval rating, for example, there was a period where the presidents were given a honeymoon. Again, the structural forces I mentioned meant that for a lot of people who were not in the party of the president, if they were in the House or Senate, they had to worry about their voters who liked that president. Now, much more members of both parties, but particularly the Republican Party, have to worry about what the most ideologically fervent members of their party worry about. Why? Because they're worried about primary challenges in their party. So when you ask about approval rating of Joe Biden, his approval rating is 58 in the last CBS poll. The average has him around 54. But if you look within those numbers, the number of Republicans who think he's doing a good job is as low. The split between Republicans who think he's doing a good job and Democrats who think he's doing a job, that split is as wide as it has ever been. And what that tells us is that when people are thinking about whether the president is doing a good job or not, they're not evaluating the facts of the case. They're just figuring out which jersey he's wearing, what party he's from. And then they're just deciding, well, if he's not in my party, he must be doing a bad job. That changes what the nature of bipartisanship means, because it changes the political structure and the incentives for the politicians with whom a president might work. And so we are in a situation in which you have a president acting very vigorously on a party line basis, but at a time when everything is happening on a party line basis. And so we kind of have to come up with new ways of thinking about the presidency and new ways of measuring versus, say, comparing it to the way things were in the past.
All right. Well, speaking of comparing to how things were in the past, I want to play a clip from President Bill Clinton's 1994 State of the Union address talking about spending. Let's listen to that.
Next month, I will send you one of the toughest budgets ever presented to Congress. It will cut spending in more than 300 programs, eliminate 100 domestic programs, and reforms the ways in which governments buy goods and services. This year, we must again make the hard choices to live within the hard spending ceilings we have set. We must.
So, John, how times have changed. You had a Democratic president advocating fiscal austerity and smaller government. It seems almost quaint now. What do President Biden's spending proposals say about how the party and the nation have changed?
So much is going on there. One thing we should realize is that the package that Joe Biden passed through Congress, $1.9 trillion, amazing numbers compared to 1994, but widely popular with the public, in part because the public's tolerance for spending has, they've gotten a lot more lax about it than during Bill Clinton's era. One of the things Bill Clinton was doing was sending a signal to voters saying, I'm not this crazy liberal that I might have appeared to be during my first year in office. He was trying to politically correct things, and the way he was doing it was by saying, I am not going to go break the bank with all of my spending proposals. In part, he had to also do that because the structural incentives inside the Congress, there were a lot of things called conservative Democrats. Now we have a couple of them, and they're causing a lot of headaches for Joe Biden. But there were a lot of them back then, and they were putting pressure on the president not to spend too much. So two things have changed with respect to fiscal austerity, or I should say three. One, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which hasn't happened for more than 100 years. And so the country is in a mood for spending to fix the overwhelming challenges we face. But second, people aren't exercised about the budget deficit the way they used to be. And that includes not just politicians, because we saw the Republican Party support Donald Trump's budget-busting proposals, but we also see the Federal Reserve isn't really as exercised as it used to be about inflation, which used to have a connection to deficit spending. And Wall Street doesn't seem to be bothered either. It's been doing quite nicely in the last few weeks. So you have both the politicians don't care about deficit spending the way they used to, and the economic signals aren't sending warning signs either. And so you have a situation in which a president can, and also there's no political pressure from his own party, really. So a president can be a lot more bold in terms of the price tag.
Yeah, the metrics certainly have changed. John Dickerson, John, really great to have your insight and analysis. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Elaine.